Fun fact, I wrote this cold open and most of today's show in a lesbian bar, so for once you actually can blame the news on hot women. Anyway, this week, feds shot a bunch of folks. Google pushed forced AI upscaling on all non-HD videos. The government shutdown is still going. Republican Mike Johnson has continued to keep the House out of session for the 7th straight week, still hiding from Arizona Rep. Adelita Gravalva, all while the same young Republicans, who recently got caught being overt Nazis in group chats, try to label Mamdani an insurrectionist to invalidate his expected New York mayoral win tomorrow. Oh, and tomorrow is local election day for all my USC viewers. You had better be taking part. I know it's mostly municipal and state issues on the ballots this year, but those are the most important to your day-to-day lives, y'all. And welcome to Muttday Morning News. I'm the titular Mutt Fenn. Now let's get to some news. Actually, as my first story, we're going to cover something thus far only covered by the Harvard Crimson, the student-run newspaper. It's actually a decent news source, though they do tend to focus on the school itself, but that doesn't matter much when the event in question was a bomb going off inside the Golden Sun building of the Harvard Medical School on Saturday the 1st. 2 people were recorded leaving the building and are considered suspects. The building has been cleared by Boston's bomb squad, and Harvard has declared it open save for a single floor of the building. The one funny bomb is an ineffectual bomb. Remember how the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, back when we all acknowledged it, we started developing wild social changes like normalizing working from home, the invaluable role some of the lowest paid, unskilled workers provide to our daily lives, and a grudging understanding that each of us is, at best, one really bad day from not becoming the Joker, but homeless. You know, when local, state, and federal governments showed us that they can indeed just give us money, freeze rent, provide healthcare, block evictions and foreclosures, and it resulted in massive spikes in consumer spending before all of that was clawed back. Well, the Trumpian murder of SNAP seems to be having a mildly similar effect. Despite 2 federal judges ruling the dictator was obliged, and indeed required, to use SNAP's emergency fund to keep it funded during the government shutdown of his own making, 42 million USians have been without them for 3 days. Technically, the Rhode Island judge, John McConnell, gave Trump's USDA until the end of the day today to make full SNAP benefits available again, or partial benefits by Wednesday, which to this mutt sounds like giving the dictator an excuse to starve those 42 million people for an extra 2 days, but go off, I suppose. I did start this story off with a message of mild hope, so to that end, I suggest you look towards Atlanta. The mayor, Andre Dickens, on October 30th ordered a city-wide pause on evictions and water shutoffs until the shutdown ends, or January 31st, 2026, whichever comes first. I hope the shutdown comes to a close first, but we're 1 day away from this being the longest shutdown in U.S. history, so we'll see. Unfortunately, as a mayoral administrative order, the eviction pause will only affect those in city housing partnerships, but that still protects a large swath of Atlantans. We can just do these things to help each other. Speaking of helping each other, on November 2nd, Catherine Rampel reported on a retailer notice at least 2 grocery stores received from the USDA after they offered discounts to Americans whose SNAP benefits were denied by Trump. The notice was an overt threat to disallow use of SNAP benefits when/if they're available again from the stores for violating the SNAP Equal Treatment Rule, a rule in place to keep retailers from overcharging SNAP beneficiaries or forcing them to purchase from an even more limited set of goods than the US government already pigeonholes them into. Trump's USDA is instead using that rule to claim giving SNAP beneficiaries whom Trump has chosen to starve as a bargaining chip discounts is a violation. I need to stress this, while the GOP controls the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency, they have decided it is so important that the Affordable Care Act subsidies expire, making every USian pay more for healthcare, even those not on ACA plans, as the costs ripple outward, that they have shut down the government for 34 days. As an aside, the previous longest US shutdown was 35 days. Under Trump 1.0, they have denied food to 42 million USians. They have furloughed and illegally fired thousands of government employees. They have changed every federal website header and email signature to one blaming the Democrats, who are not in control of any element of the U.S. government, in open violation of U.S. federal law, commonly known as the Hatch Act. And now they're sending threats to grocery stores for offering not even free food to those looking down the barrel of starvation, but reduced price food. Hey, want to hear something horrible that doesn't have to do with the US government? Well, you're still watching, so I'll take it as an implicit yes. We've hit a new level of financial nihilism, and oh girl, it's not a good thing. This is Covered, one of the most vile developments to erupt from one of the fintech industry's cancerous pustules I've personally ever seen. Let me just read from their ex-post. We have officially launched Fire Emoji, Bet on Your Bills, OnlyFans, Child Support, and last night's Uber. Wipe them from your credit card by playing your favorite casino games, all from the comfort of our app. No VPN, no crypto deposits. You know, gambling with your own bills is collateral for when a payday loan just isn't predatory enough. So you know how credit cards have those point programs to get you to use them for more purchases, so you can rake in interest charges for those purchases while you feel like you're getting a good deal and can spend those points on something else theoretically? This is like that, but worse. Plus, these schools are looking to launch their own credit card inherently tied into this system in 2026. Here's how it works. You tie your credit card or debit card into your covered account, then purchases using that card are reflected by giving you an app-based currency you can use on these slot machines to maybe, potentially, hopefully, but it's gambling so you won't, win back some portion of the cost. But that's the first one's always free hook. Because when the gambler's fallacy strikes after you've burned all the currency your purchases netted you, there's always the option of buying more practice coins for more pulls at the slot machines. See, Covered is trying to skirt gambling laws by operating as a sweepstake, which is why they have all these layers of deniability. Oh yeah, our app actively incentivizes financial nihilism by gamifying wasteful spending, but that's on the end user, not us. We're not violating gambling laws. No one has to purchase practice coins to play in our sweepstakes. Purchasing those coins just offers you more pulls. It's totally above board. Hey, cursed but related thing, remember how I had that scrolling list of donors to the White House East Wing Demolition Fund last week? Well, I, and at least one commenter, were a bit perplexed to see Hard Rock International on that list. I figured it was different from the Hard Rock Cafe, but then I went to go look into it after the show last week, and no, it is them. Turns out, for the last several years, they've not only been investing heavily in their own casinos, but into so-called prediction markets, better known as those terrifying sites where folks bet on the outcomes of everything from elections to whether shooting victims will survive. To editorialize for a second, while I'm generally quite here for letting people do whatever it is that they want so long as it doesn't harm others, the normalization of gambling in our everyday lives is toxic and dangerous. And did you note that part about harming others? Yeah, well, choosing to gamble shouldn't be able to harm others, though we all know it can and will do harm to those who gamble, and thus, a company should not stand to profit from gambling as they are profiting from harm. Okay, back to reporting with my much more constrained bias. If you can figure out which part of that was the joke, good on you, I suppose. And speaking of the East Wing Demolition Fund, turns out, despite claims of full transparency, look, you and I both know Trump lies like a rug, but I still have to point out the hypocrisy, okay? The New York Times uncovered several donors to the fund who hadn't been listed. Given what those who openly donated are invested in, do you even want to guess who Trump was? Ashamed is the wrong word. Knew he'd catch even more flack for than the crypto grifters? If you guessed two Medicare reimbursement companies, you'd be right. For those confused by the name, they're grifting health insurers who prey on the elderly who can get on Medicare, but don't realize that these plans just act as a middleman, limiting their healthcare options, raising prices, and pocketing the difference. But that's not all. Nvidia's in here. They're the backbone of the US AI bubble. The Wall Street megalith with BlackRock, who are angling for a stake in the Panama Canal ports, as well as a few individuals like Jeff Yass, a major stakeholder in ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, who is expected to profit handsomely off the forced sale of TikTok to Oracle, and Greg Brockman, the president of OpenAI, who managed to sneak under the radar, with folks generally only being aware of OpenAI's CEO and founder, Sam Altman. Okay, let's get away from incredibly depressing finance and benefits talk and instead discuss, crap, this is a story about journalistic censorship. You may recall how on October 15th, Pete Hegseth stripped the press badges from nearly every member of the Pentagon Press Association for their failure to sign on to a memo that would criminalize reporting anything, even publicly known military information, without prior Pentagon approval. Well, they're doing something similar in the White House now, too. On October 31st, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt issued a memo through the National Security Council stating journalists are, quote, no longer permitted to access Room 140 without prior approval. Room 140 being an office where the press secretary or their deputy, the White House Communications Director, along with many other senior officials, are expected to be available to credentialed press on fairly short notice. This is in addition to the White House booting the Associated Press, Reuters, and Bloomberg News from the permanent reporting pool at the beginning of his term. Hey, did y'all hear about the most recent internal split on the right? Because those just keep happening and they're always funny. I mean, if you're watching this show, I sort of assume the chances are better than 50-50, but just in case you missed it, Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host who had his show canceled in 2023 after spreading the slanderous claim Dominion voting machines cheated the 2020 election, decided in his remarkably finite wisdom to interview avowed neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes on his X show. My viewers may recall the last time I talked about Fuentes when Charlie Kirk was shot, as the alleged shooter was embroiled in Groyper, the word Fuentes' army of brain-boiled terrifying white twinks use for themselves culture. He has been a peripheral figure in the US right-wing politics for years now, having come up in the Gamergate movement, and is personally responsible for the rot of white supremacy and patriarchal grist that surrounds gamer culture, especially online, doubly so on Reddit, and even more so on 4chan and all of its delightfully fucky derivatives. He has, however, generally been an outside factor due to his rabid anti-Semitism. And I don't even mean the way Israel and the US right have been attempting to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. Fuentes openly opposes Israel because it's a Jewish state, not because it's committing a genocide, but because it's a Jewish state, and in fact has tried to use that wedge to pull in folks who are pro-Palestine, but credulous enough to not look into his views on, well, everyone who isn't a white Nazi. He was naturally a perfect fit for Tucker Carlson. As another aside, every time I have to write his name, the imp that lives in my brain insists I need to make a joke about how Tucker Carlson is the sort of name I expect a cis author to give a trans girl as an acronym before forcing her to return to it somehow. Hey, what was the name of that one allegedly trans character John Boyne, noted homophobic and transphobic shitgoblin and plagiarist, wrote, whose arc was doing exactly that for her mother's political career? I don't even want to remember the name of that book, so I'm okay with just assuming that her name was also Tucker Carlson. While Fuentes vibes great with Carlson, about half the Republican establishment, including the Heritage Foundation, creators of Project 2025, have been running backwards as fast as possible. They have Israeli investments to guard, so, you know. You know how SNAP has an emergency fund that Trump has categorically refused to use to save 42 million Americans from starving starting on November 1st? Well, the 31st was also the next military paycheck day, and despite Trump's claim that the $130 million theoretically anonymous donation from Timothy Mellon, a reclusive railroad baron, would magically cover the over $5.3 billion the U.S. military costs in wages and housing allowances every 2 weeks, the White House did manage to appropriate funds to theoretically pay them. $1.4 billion is coming from the remainder left over from the $8 billion the administration pulled from the military R&D budget to pay military wages on the 14th of October, while $2.5 billion is coming from the $2.9, the hellacious big beautiful bill set aside for the purpose, And yet another $1.4 billion was pulled from the shipbuilding and conversion budget. Odd that for these bills he can just grab money to pay for them, but not for the one that stops 42 million Americans from starving, isn't it? Except that's not even what happened. On October 27th, the Federal News Network reported that out of 369 military families that had reached out to the National Military Family Association, 164 families reported being underpaid on the October 14th paychecks, from as little as $148 short to $2,000 short in some cases. A further 55 families reported they were not in fact paid at all, while 50 families reported being overpaid. Some by a few hundred, while a few said they received 3 times their regular pay. Worse, many are running into the even less than fun issue where they received pay stubs, whether for the right or wrong amount, but the money itself never actually made it into their bank accounts. Not only is Trump starving USians and forcing a government shutdown over his own wanton cruelty, he can't even manage to properly pay the troops he keeps threatening to use against his own citizenry. Okay, I need a brief... something stupid to mock where only someone who deserves it suffers. Ooh, I know. Have y'all heard any of the ridiculous stuff alleged rapist, failed governor, and failed Democratic mayoral candidate Andrew Cuomo has been up to? Well, last night he got that sweet, sweet Trump endorsement he's been angling for. Even the actual Republican running for mayor of New York hasn't done that. It's hard to tell if Trump was really sold on Cuomo's policies or ideals. He'd have to have some for that. Then again, so would Trump, so maybe that is it. Of course, it also could have been Cuomo stooping to the level of Trump and Gavin Trump 3.0 Newsom when he posted and then quickly deleted an ad made almost entirely of Azathoth Ex Machina generated videos, including Mamdani himself back on October 24th. But the real clincher was probably the ad Cuomo didn't delete on October 30th. Again, clearly made with regurgitative AI, this one, I'm Just a Shill, riffs on the Schoolhouse Rock song I'm Just a Bill, albeit with Mpreg? I'd ask how Disney, the owners of Schoolhouse Rock, feel about their characters and songs being used by politicians, but let's be honest, it's Disney. They're more likely to take issue with the Mpreg and the Muslim, Mamdani, in the ad. How about some further news in the death of journalism field? While Bari Weiss got her $150 million golden parachute from the Free Press into the editor-in-chief chair of CBS, which she is wildly unqualified for, her new staff have not been so lucky. Well, the non-white ones. Last week, CBS went through a massive round of layoffs. All the announced on-air talent cuts are, notably, women, with about half of those being women of color. And while the off-air cuts have not been as openly leaked, reportedly, they're also hitting everyone but white men. All while Weiss is allegedly costing CBS $10,000 a day for a personal security detail, while she's still managing to publish stories with the New York mayoral frontrunner's name misspelled. And her newsroom continues to be the only thing leakier than the Pentagon, as staffers seem to be passing on her most ridiculous comments from every 9 a.m. meeting the second they hear them. Highlights include, reportedly after the Louvre heist was announced, BT dubs, they're up to 7 arrests now, so that's getting weird. She suggested that CBS should interview Dan Brown because his 2003 book, The Da Vinci Code, featured a murder in the Louvre. Last week, she allegedly suggested her staff do a piece on how people concerned about climate collapse aren't having kids, and that that's a problem. The same day, the UN announced the world had officially failed to limit global heating by the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal laid out in the 2015 Paris Agreement, which Trump tried to pull the US out of in his first term. Fun fact, it actually had a clause kind of specifically to make sure no one could back out during Trump's first term, which is how Biden overturned that withdrawal when he took office. And why Trump ordered the U.S. withdrawal from the agreement the day he took office for the second time. It was literally one of the first executive orders he signed. Okay, let's get into the fascist weeds. First up, it looks like ICE is heading for some leadership purges, and wow, is that a bad thing for all of us? Yes, it can actually get worse than this. See, ICE is technically two very different organizations and is often conflated with yet a third, Customs and Border Patrol. ICE itself is made up of HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, who, despite the name, are focused on transnational crime, mostly trafficking, both of people and drugs, and ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations, who are closer to what most of us think of as ICE, though they still have a going for the worst of the worst mentality. At least they claim to. Claimed to. In fact, before the second Trump administration, HSI was actually trying to spin itself off as a separate entity because of the ignominy of ICE was actively hampering their legitimate efforts to block human trafficking and drug running. Since Trump 2.0 began, they, specifically HSI, have been getting the shit end of the stick for exactly that attitude, while ERO have generally been more gung-ho, if less prepared for Trump's concentration camp plans, which is where Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino comes in. Seen here, adopting fascist aesthetics. No, that is not a generated image. He dressed like that intentionally when he went to go to CNN's bureau office on Tuesday, the same day that he also had a meeting with Judge Sara Ellis. Due to lax, which is to say non-existent, identification rules, ICE and Border Patrol, both operating under the Department of Homeland Security, are often mistaken for or even pretend to be each other. While ICE has been party to much of Trump's violence towards USians, and one of the driving recruitment platforms as well, their go for the worst of the worst mentality means they're really just not prepared for the scale of cruelty he's been demanding. While Border Patrol is the South Shore apartment raid, when naked women and children were marched into moving vans, the cattle car of modern America, and sorted by skin color. Yeah, that was Border Patrol. Reportedly, ICE field office heads in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Philadelphia, Denver, El Paso, San Diego, New Orleans, Seattle, and Portland have been removed and replaced with Border Patrol Bovino loyalists. And speaking of Bovino, Judge Sara Ellis called him into court on Tuesday the 28th, where he, in no uncertain terms, confirmed federal agents had indeed openly violated her temporary restraining order against the use of chemical weapons, especially tear gas, on protesters, bystanders, journalists, and children without multiple warnings prior, and a clear indication that federal agents' lives were in active danger. The hearing concluded after Bovino further stated under oath that despite Judge Sara Ellis's court order, feds operating in Chicagoland did not universally have body cams, nor clear and conspicuously placed identification of some sort. Judge Ellis ordered that all reports for use of force, which agents are required to file if they fired their weapons, be provided to her office to prove their existence, and that Bovino would report to her every day at 5:30 p.m. to go over the last 24 hours worth of reports. Bovino agreed. I mean, it was a judicial order, he was obliged to, but he did actually verbally agree with her. Under oath, didn't stop the DHS from going to an appeals court to have that ruling overturned before Bovino's very first 5:30 meeting with Ellis the next day. Needless to say, Bovino has continued to lead the masked kidnappers across Chicagoland as they wantonly violate yet more court orders. Halloween is supposed to be a fun time for kids, adults, queers, honestly, anyone who loves dressing up and candy. But of course, Trump just had to ruin that too. LA Taco caught at least one federal agent going further than their normal face coverings and using a horror movie mask while dutifully kidnapping Californians. In Chicago, Border Patrol and ICE, led by Bovino himself, tore through Albany Park, firing chemical weapons in violation of Sara Ellis's TRO yet again. and kidnapping at least 2 U.S. citizens. Actually, per a report from ProPublica, more than 170 U.S. citizens are being held by immigration agents in their concentration camps. I reiterate, citizenship, or lack thereof, should not be the barometer by which we are judging whether cruelty is acceptable. However, it is also still important to point out where the rhetoric used by folks like Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who claims that non-illegal aliens, as though a human being can be illegal, will simply be interrogated by ICE or Border Patrol for a matter of moments before released. He's yet to say anything about the 170 citizens that clearly prove he's wrong, but go off. And let's not forget the cherry on top. While Trump illegally and in defiance of court orders and basic human decency and compassion denies food to 42 million Americans, Donald Trump hosted a Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party and also looked incredibly unhappy and in significant pain while doing so, to which this mutt can only say, good. You'd think one would want to avoid referencing a book depicting the cruel ways the rich simply don't perceive the poor as human 4 years before an economic bubble popped, driving those same bourgeoisie into breadlines, but sure, bub. Sure. Lastly, a personal note. Last week, I shouted out Autumn Wolff's Itch Bundle and GoFundMe as she tried to escape the US for Canada, where she had a student visa lined up. Well, on November 1st, she arrived at the border and was summarily booted back for not having enough money. She was not informed how much she needed, and was additionally told her wife would not be able to join her, as the university had told her, because Canada has very recently instituted much harsher border control rules themselves. Autumn and her wife Clover have already left their main home, packed up their things in storage, and left their jobs, and are now trying to find a place to live while effectively homeless. Her GoFundMe has been pivoted to the new goal of making sure they're not homeless, so please check it out or look into getting some of her books on Itch. Or, while the bundle is over, she does have a book, The Grafting of Persephone, in the Toxic Yuri November bundle, named Poison Lilies on Itch, since Itch previously de-indexed nearly the entire Toxic Yuri game jam, largely over that name, at least as far as anyone can tell, when the PayPros shenanigans began back in July. Which reminds me of my final story of this week. If you've fallen off doing your dailies, it's a great time to pick them back up. You can go to stoppaypros.neocities.org or yellat.money to learn how easy it is for you to join the fight against censorship, as credit card networks like Visa and MasterCard and payment processors like Stripe and PayPal try to tell you how you get to spend your money. Anyway, schedule. Oh my goodness, I'm actually in the right spot for this for once. Tonight's movie in the Discord will be Dr. Strangelove, because there's actually a very silly connection between Dr. Strangelove and No Not November, which I will explain once I'm done with the rest of the schedule. Tomorrow is a U.S. election day. My Coloradans, you all have already gotten your ballots, so you very well might have already dropped them in the mailbox, but if you haven't yet, remember to take them to a polling place to drop them off before, I think it's 6:30 tomorrow, depending on your local municipality. If you're not in Colorado, I can't necessarily say how your voting system works, but please make sure to get out there and vote, because yeah, I get that it's not the election where you're deciding the president or even probably any of your state senate, well, your congressional representatives, but it is where you're going to be having an impact on a lot of your local issues, and let's be honest, those are the things that affect you on a day-to-day basis. It's very important for you to get out and vote for these. I will also point out that certain people, like, say, Michael Bennet, one of the senators for Colorado who's trying to run for governor, doesn't fucking know what half the ballot initiatives are that need to be voted on tomorrow, and can't even make claims on what initiatives he supports. Do not vote for that man for governor of Colorado. He is an absolute centrist, quizzling moron. It would be better if he was actually a competent idiot, but no, I guess a competent monster, because at least then, I don't know, there's intentionality behind it. In this case, he's just a wooden plank. I'll be playing Pokemon Legends ZA. We're now over in the post-game at noon on Wednesday. I will not be streaming Pet Play number 1, but it will be coming out on YouTube. That's youtube.com/fenoflore. On Thursday the 6th, we'll be doing more Pokemon Legends ZA at noon on the 7th, and Tarkov on Saturday, with no plans on Sunday because I have to write shows and things. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it though. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there's anything else I wanted to throw in here. I wanted to do more of a thing about Michael Bennett being just a absolute useless shit goblin, because he was on a podcast last week that I was listening to while editing last week's show, and it was fascinating to listen to him make absolutely no points and just keep trying to talk about how he's so different from the current Colorado governor, Jared Polis, while not being able to actually say how he'd be different. Like, it's a half-hour podcast, and it was fascinating because the folks running it actually asked him direct questions like, what's your policy? And his response was, not what we're doing. Like, cool, what is it? Not what we're doing. Okay, that's great. That's not a policy. What do you want to do? Oh, well, we have to listen to the people who need the things that we're offering. And I'm not overstating the amount of ums and uhs. I am, however, accelerating how quickly he spoke, because dude is not a confident public speaker. This is also the jackass who thinks that the Democrats need to end the shutdown because they've won the moral victory by proving that they're standing up for the Affordable Care Act subsidies that are still dead in the water. Yeah, no, that didn't make any sense either. But yeah, he's one of the few folks who was actually brave enough, which is to say foolish enough in this case, but to openly, without condition of anonymity, inform, I believe it was an interview with The Hill, that, yeah, no, I'm in support of ending the government shutdown and working with the Republicans to... His goal didn't even make any sense, personally. I still don't understand what the hell it was, so, Anyway, I have to do all this crap now, which means I probably end the stream too. I'm still gonna leave the thing about Autumn's GoFundMe, but whatever, because look, that woman works 3 jobs on a regular-ass basis and deserves to not have to do that. So I'm still so happy that she found housing, but don't care. She deserves more. So, there was another shit. Nope, it's gone. Okay. I would legitimately recommend the Poisoned Lilies bundle. I am doing a special on that on Pet Play as well. I'm doing a story on that in Pet Play as well. But basically any bundle that is organized by B. Benjanin, I always fuck up her last name, which is a personal failing, not an excuse. Benjanin Sridwe? Okay, I feel like I added, or I transposed some syllables there. She's 1/3 of the women that are the pen name Maria Ying. Any bundle that she organizes, I will just automatically recommend, because she is a great writer. Her 2 co-writers are great writers, and despite the fact that she is a cis woman, she also basically pushes trans authors, and seemingly finds some of the absolute best ones out there and encourages them, and she is a good human being and also an absolute shit goblin, who, look, she has a Wikipedia page largely off the fact that every single time someone tries to start shit with her, they get absolutely dumpstered, because they usually try and accuse her either, weirdly, this happens a lot, of race faking, despite the fact that she is Thai and open about it. It's just that her profile picture is a stylized version of a character from one of her books who is arguably white. I guess I would say technically Mediterranean, but whatever. At least for Greek canon, but meh. And because it happens so regularly that someone will try and start shit and then not realize, oh, no, B is not someone you could just very easily bully, because basically every trans woman that has spent any time in an authorial space is aware of her and knows that she's just a good person who also doesn't take shit. It's a very strange situation. But all of her bundles are almost universally some of the best out there. The The Poisoned Lilies it's all Toxic Yuri. It's not all trans authors, but I believe it is mostly, I think it is, if not all, it's mostly women, and a lot of trans women included in it. It has, I just wrote this down because it's in Pet Play, 22 books and 2 audiobooks. Both of the audiobooks are also available in book format too. Though I think 3 of the books are pre-orders. One of them by, I want to say Bailey Saxon has a pre-order. Shoot, Hope Ford. Close that. I bet I did. I bet I did. That sounds like a dumb thing I'd do. This is all the stuff that I Protomen, because I had to double check on when all of their albums came out when I was doing that. It's a different Protomen screen. I thought I kept all of these open, but I did not. Cool. But, damn, okay. Well, with that, I am going to call the stream. So thank you all so very much for joining me. If you were watching on the YouTube VOD, thank you as well. Remember that you can support me and everything that I do, which matters a whole hell of a lot to me because I'm currently surviving off of about $100 a month between Patreon, Coffee, and Twitch, with, I think Twitch is actually technically the largest portion of that, and it's also very arbitrary. But yeah, thank you very much to April, Fragile Paper, Manfred, Pinball Witch, Pimento, and Yalk for supporting the stream over on patreon.com/Fen, that's PHENN, or on coffee.com/Fen. I quite literally could not do this without all of y'all. You can find everything that I do over at fen.gay or on Blue Sky at also fen.gay. And I do mean it, like literally, PHENN.gay is my website. I love that that's a fucking URL slug that I can get now. Hopefully I can find some time to actually post some, like, written shit this week, because I've been wanting to do more of that, which is part of why I'm also not doing as many streams, because I really like doing streams, but the problem is that I can't do anything else while I'm streaming, and I can't necessarily, like, always convert that into other stuff. Like, yeah, if there's funny moments and shit, we can obviously grab clips, which are the most amazing thing. Seriously, anyone who takes clips, you are amazing, and I adore you, and I've probably already thanked you personally, but seriously, it is a big deal. It helps so much, but that also requires that, you know, funny stuff happen, or that I remember when funny stuff happened if no one's around to clip it, and I have to go to find it. Also, it requires that the YouTube systems like the clips, which sometimes they don't, so, let's see if I've got anyone to throw y'all over to. Realized I own stream opens. I'm a fool. I hope nothing has broken. Realize that's gonna make noise. That's Animal Crossing. That's Ghosts of Yote. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna throw y'all over to. Yeah, let's go with Iggy again. Apparently, I'm just throwing y'all to VTubers lately. That's not a problem or anything. I just feel very silly that, like, I've somehow fallen in with a bunch of VTubers, and not even fallen in with, I guess fallen around. In with implies more direct connection than I actually have. Oh, unless only 3 of you were going on the raid. No, then we won't, because that just feels silly, and also that's getting towards the amount where some notifiers won't go off, which, that's my fault for taking so long to do this show, so I guess we might just kill the stream. Or taking so long to do the show. This has been going for, what, 2 hours? Yeah, oh, this is gonna be a long pre and post show. It's fine. Bye all. Shit, I can't press the button. There we go.